Welcome to Inner Peace, Better Health, the space where healing meets awareness. Today we're joined by Lawrence Bartley, known as the Autistic Hypnotist. Through his work, Lawrence helps autistic individuals navigate anxiety and reconnect with calm using the transformative power of hypnotherapy. Having walked the same path himself, his story is not just about helping others. It's about proving that peace is possible from the inside out. Lawrence, it's so nice to have you on the show.
It is so nice to be here, Charu. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me and giving me this opportunity to share my story.
Thank you. Thank you. It's totally our pleasure. So, Lawrence, your journey began from personal experience with anxiety. What first drew you to hypnotherapy as a tool for healing?
So originally, I wasn't interested in hypnotherapy as a tool for healing. Originally, I got interested in hypnosis as a tool for persuasion and influence and more social skills because with autism, I had pretty bad social skills, difficult making eye contact, difficulty understanding basically all aspects of communication. So I got interested in hypnosis, believing that no matter what I did in my life, it would be a useful communication tool. So eventually I went to a hypnosis class where they were teaching hypnotherapy. And while I was there, I worked with a hypnotherapist, and that is where I learned to overcome my anxiety and find that inner peace inside myself again. Eventually I kept going back to hypnotherapy classes, working with people in the classes, and eventually I decided to become a hypnotherapist and start helping people to overcome their anxieties as well.
And this makes me wonder, how did it begin to change the way you related to your thoughts and emotions?
The way it relates to my thoughts and emotions, well, I can give you one example is that before doing any sort of like speaking event or having to talk to people, I had a habit back when I had anxiety of I'd be rehearsing every conversation, going through sort of damage control of what could possibly go wrong, making sure everything would be perfect so that no one would dislike me, no one would give out to me, or I wouldn't get in trouble. One thing that changed is after I overcame the anxiety, I had a different habit of suddenly I'm thinking about all the different things that can suddenly go right. Oh my God, we could talk about this thing. We could talk about that thing. This is going to be so exciting. Instead of being terrified, and nervous, it was now excitement.
Yes, looking at the positive stuff while totally not ignoring the wrong ones, but focusing mostly on the positive stuff, I believe.
Yeah, it's a changing in focus.
And it's so powerful when healing methods come from lived experience. It makes every insight feel authentic and real. So, this brings me to our next question. Many people still misunderstand hypnotherapy. How would you explain what truly happens in a therapeutic session?
Yeah, so every hypnotist does it a little differently. My work is mostly done content-free hypnosis, and what that means is that we don't do much discussion on like personal issues and sort of going into people's childhood traumas. Instead, we focus more on solutions. And so the way I do hypnotherapy with people is I tend to use an imagination game. That's how I view the hypnotherapy. Because all our behaviors as humans are based on feelings, moving towards something we want more of, something we want less of, and we change those feelings using imagination. So what I do with my clients is I'll have them create a representation of their anxiety and then start creating shifts in it. For example, I had one client who had anxiety. I asked him, okay, if that was anxiety was a thing, what would it be? He said it would be a graveyard. So we started changing the graveyard. We removed the graves, we added in flowers, we made it more beautiful. And then he imagined it drawing into himself, breathed in deeply, imagined it locking into himself. And it was that changing representation that changed how his unconscious mind was processing the anxiety, changing his focus. And that was how he overcame the anxiety.
Hmm.
So I know a lot of people have the belief that it's sort of a mind control, voodoo magic. It's really more an imagination game, or at
Hmm.
least that's how I do it.
I love that. Imagination as a tool for healing something as complex as anxiety. But also, this makes me curious about how does it differ from common misconceptions about being hypnotized?
So most of the common misconceptions about being hypnotized come from a sort of stage hypnosis background. So in stage hypnosis, you have the hypnotist in front of the audience. They get a bunch of volunteers. Here's the interesting thing about the stage hypnosis, though, is that people volunteer to be on stage. They're doing everything of their own free will. They're going with what the hypnotist wants. But people in the audience tend to think, oh, I would never act that way on stage. I would never behave that way in public. So they get this perception that sort of mind control. And that is where the misconception comes from.
It's not total control, is it? It's not
No,
giving
it's
the
not.
control to
It's not
someone.
control anyway. It's
Mhm.
not control in any sense. I mean, to go back to stage hypnosis, I was at a stage hypnosis show
Mm.
where the stage hypnotist thought it would be funny to have this woman come up, and she was with her husband at the time, and he said, "Okay, on count of three, imagine every bad thing your husband has ever done to you, and just swear at him like a sailor. Just give out to him. One, two, three." Her face went red. She got angry, but she stayed silent. She did not
Mm.
say a single word. Later on, she said it's because she did not swear.
Mm.
You cannot make someone do something that they do not want to do. The
Hmm.
person has to always accept the suggestions. So there's no control. It's working with someone.
So I feel like it just shows you the bigger picture, the wider angles that sometimes we as humans forget to look at or maybe overlook, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a pretty good way of putting it. Because there's a lot of different angles that people overlook. Because there's all sorts of different misconceptions about things like hypnosis, about therapy, about
Mm.
all the different healing modalities.
hmm And since hypnotherapy plays such a deep role in your journey, I would love for listeners to really understand what it is and what it isn't. As someone who works closely with autistic individuals, what unique challenges do you see in managing anxiety within that community?
Yeah, so autistic people and anxiety happen to be two of my big passions. And the thing is, a lot of autistic people have anxiety. In fact, I remember a study once that said about half of them do, and half that's a pretty big number.
Mm.
And it comes from a lot of sensory challenges, a lot of the neurotypical people not understanding these sensory challenges. For example, I used to have a massive problem with background noise, and anytime I complain about it, people would yell out to me that it cannot possibly be that bad. Well, it
Mm.
was to my brain. So, so basically, the entire chart of that can cause people to sometimes have anxiety. And working with autistic people can present a few challenges. For example, I once worked with a client who had a problem with touching his face. And that was a bit of a
Mm.
challenge because when I work with someone, I like to start them off with a bunch of neurological exercises. It's to warm up their nervous system. And if anybody watching this knows what EFT, emotional freedom techniques are, they would might recognize the bunch of emotional freedom tapping techniques of tapping on certain parts of your face.
Mm.
So obviously I couldn't do that with him because he had a thing about touching his face. So I had to adjust and start switching to tapping on different parts of his body, like his collarbone and his hand.
That's interesting. And how does hypnotherapy support them differently than traditional approaches?
Well, I can speak from my own personal experience because I was in therapy for
Mm.
a few years, and in my experience, it didn't really work. Just talking about the problem never really solved anything. I would go to therapy, but I still had the anxiety, still had all those bad anxiety feelings. So a weight, a dark weight in my stomach, sort of tension in my chest, all those problems. And I didn't, normal therapy didn't work for me.
Mm.
And the reason I suspect is just I don't think people are really wired to overcome problems by just talking about them. We need to look for solutions instead. The thing about hypnotherapy is that it works directly with someone's unconscious mind.
Hmm.
As all the problems, all behaviors, all emotions, they are all start unconsciously. So by working with someone's unconscious mind, you can get straight into the root of the problem really fast. And I believe that makes it pretty effective.
True, true. I feel like hypnotherapy comes into the picture when the solution for that problem is not necessarily just talking, and it goes beyond talking. And oftentimes, I feel like most of the people just talk for the sake of talking. So, for people like them, hypnotherapy should be the best possible answer, right?
Absolutely. I'm very big into and believing hypnotherapy is perhaps the best. Of course, I'm a hypnotherapist, so I'll say that. But I definitely believe that working with someone's unconscious mind can help people generate massive changes really fast because our unconscious mind is pretty much everything. It's
Mm,
all of us, all our emotions come from it, all our behaviors come from it, everything we believe. In fact, including all those beliefs that lead to anxiety, depression, and all those other mental health problems. So
mm,
changing things at the unconscious level can change it at all the other levels too.
True, true. Speaking about the unconscious level, this brings me to our next question, which is inner peace. Inner peace often feels like a distant dream where anxiety takes over. What does true inner peace means to you personally and professionally?
Firstly, inner peace meant that I felt calm, that I wasn't panicking, that back when I had anxiety, I had all these sensations, and people use anxiety as a word, but anxiety is it's a feeling. It's like a dark tension in different parts of your body, in my gut and in my chest. When I got the inner peace, there was no tension. The tension was gone. I felt I could breathe much easier. That I felt warmer. I felt freedom, and it was an expansive feeling instead of a tension feeling. If that makes sense.
It does, it does. And I feel like at the end of the day, inner peace doesn't actually mean going away from our chaotic side. It's more like arranging our chaotic side in a more organized manner, I feel like.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Because I feel there's way too many people who sort of take up an interest in spirituality as more of an escapist method
True.
instead of, as you said, arranging your lives.
Hmm. Right, right. And Lawrence, how can someone begin cultivating that kind of peace in their everyday life?
To cultivate that type of peace in the everyday life,
Hmm.
well, I know that there's a lot of different techniques that people can use to start create or cultivating peace. For example, one thing that I like to do is anytime that there's tension, anytime there's stress, is that I will point to the feeling inside my body, wherever that stress is. I'll pretend it's my chest right now. Because the thing is, stress, all these negative emotions, they're energy. Energy is always moving. And like I said earlier, they're feelings, and you can change feelings with imagination.
Hmm.
So I'd point to where I feel it, I'd imagine what direction it's moving in, and I start imagining it going in the other direction, spinning faster and faster, bigger, brighter and stronger, and I would imagine it so vividly that I can actually feel it in my body. I can actually feel
Hmm.
my muscles trembling. The faster it gets, the stronger it gets. And eventually I'll just breathe it in all that power and let it flow through my body. Because what happens is that you've got that problem and then you're going the other direction. So you're sort of canceling it out, if that makes sense.
It does. Somehow it does. And I also like to add, if people start seeing peace as a practice rather than a perfection, I feel like it also helps them a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, peace is definitely a practice. You know, I have a daily email list, and yesterday I sent out an email that was all about happiness is a skill. Is that
Yeah.
people think, oh, I'll get happiness if I go on my phone. I'll get happiness if I play video games, if I listen to music. No, you cultivate happiness within yourself.
True. True, true. That's so true. And I believe and go by that. And also, for those listening who might still be hesitant to explore hypnotherapy, maybe you could help clear the air a bit, a little, maybe?
Oh, yeah, okay. So for anybody interested in exploring hypnotherapy, well, the first thing you realize is there is a lot of different types of hypnotherapy. For example, I do it content-free. Some people do based on regression work, which involves going back into the past, going sort of reliving all those traumas, but taking out the emotion so that you're seeing it from a neutral perspective. I'm not a big fan of that method. I prefer my content-free stuff. So if somebody is interested in hypnotherapy, they need to decide which method they would go to. If somebody is also interested in hypnotherapy, they need to also make a decision that they want to be healed, because you can't force hypnosis onto people. So they need to make a straight up decision that I want to be healed. I am ready to be healed. That it has to be me who heals. It can't be someone else, because you can't control her people. It has to be me who heals. I have to want it. I have to want it now.
Mm-hmm. And this also makes me curious. What's one myth you would like to dispel about hypnotherapy, and one truth you would like everyone to remember?
One myth I like to dispel, definitely the mind control myth, because that comes up basically all the time. I was talking to another man the other day, and he was telling me about his own hypnosis experience. He was a psychologist, but when he was in college, he met a hypnotist. He had his own hypnosis experience, but he was so terrified during the entire time because he was in a really religious phase at that time. He was all, oh, this is going to be mind control. Oh, he's going to take control of my mind. And it very much held him back. So it's not mind control. It's working with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing you said was a myth I'd like to debunk, and one I'd like to do what with?
Yeah, the truth. One truth about hypnotherapy you would like everyone to remember.
Okay, a truth I would like everyone to remember. A truth I'd like everyone to remember would be, I'm not sure.
No,
Okay,
no.
imagination. Imagination.
Yeah.
That's what I'll go with. That is an imagination game. That it's really simple. That all it is using imagination to change your perception on things. And doing so, change perception. You change how you look at the world. You change how you're interacting with the world. And changing how you're interacting with the world, you change your entire life.
Yes, yes. And I feel like we don't give enough credit for for the power of imagination that it holds, right?
And totally. I mean, if you think about anxiety itself, where does anxiety come from? It's your imagination of all the things that could go wrong. Like I said earlier, I had the habit of thinking about everything that could go wrong. I was in constant damage control mode.
We live on imagination now, I feel like. So, Lawrence, what's a small, calming experience our listeners can try today to experience that inner stillness?
Oh, yeah, I am. I have an interesting technique for that. If anybody's interested in Shinjitsu, it's a Japanese technique, and all it is you simply take your hand and then you just put your finger on it. You press just enough to get a pulse, and you just hold it there for a minute. This is a technique that I've heard of. I've used it myself many times to help with different problems. You just hold it, and then you feel for a pulse, and then you just leave it there. It is that simple. And each finger represents a different emotion. It was fear, worry, anger, sadness, and low self-esteem. So when you have so you have fear, hold the thumb, worry, the first finger, anger, the middle finger, of course, sadness, the ring finger, and low self-esteem, the pinky finger. And you just hold it just for 1 minute. You can do it as you're going to sleep. I will literally do this every night as I'm going to sleep, going through each of the different fingers.
Yes, that's really interesting, and I feel like this is the biggest takeaways for me from this conversation. I feel like.
Yeah, it is. It's all because of how our body and mind are wired. That you can
Mm.
stimulate certain parts. Like I think everyone knows about the funny bone. That if you hit the funny bone, it causes you to laugh, even if it hurts. But in
Oh.
another sense, you've got to stimulate other parts of your body, like the fingers, and it can help you to release that anxiety, to release that stress, the anger, the fear, the self-esteem.
Hmm. Amazing, amazing. That's really interesting. And Lawrence, before we wrap our episode, for the listeners who will be so interested in connecting with you, please tell them the ways to do so.
Uh, my website, lawrencebartley.com, I have a daily newsletter. And if you sign up to the newsletter, you also get a free hypnosis for sleep recording to help people to sleep better, because I think we all know the problems that lack of sleep causes.
Hmm.
And I also have social media at law_Bartley, which is on X. So if you want to connect with me, those are 2 ways to do it.
Great, great. So the social media ID and the website link will be in our show notes. So I request all our listeners to go and check that too. Well, Lawrence, that was a very interesting and insightful conversation with you on the show.
Well, thank you, Shara. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, thank you. What a heartfelt and enlightening talk with Lawrence Bartley. His work reminds us that inner peace isn't a luxury, it's a skill we can all learn to nurture. Whether through breath, awareness, or gentle hypnosis, calm is always within reach. Until next time, take a pause, be kind to your mind, and let peace guide your way forward. Thank you for tuning in. This has been your host, Charu, and you've been listening to Inner Peace, Better Health, where peace is power and overthinking's overrated.